Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here today. We are on our seventh hack, which is titled Why a Playbook for Sales Teams. So in today's presentation, you will learn what is a sales playbook and why you should have one. First things first, my name is Belle. With me is Nimrod here, and together we will be facilitating the webinar. A little bit of housekeeping before we start. Due to technical issues on the usual Hub platform provided by HubSpot, we've been approved to run today smoothly on Zoom. This means we can actually see you. So as soon as HubSpot confirms the technical issues are resolved, we will resume to the previous platform, we hope by next hug. If you have any questions in this presentation, please type them in the chat at any time. Now I'm thrilled to introduce our presenter, none other than our esteemed Director of Lupo Digital, Glenn Miller. Over to you, Glenn.
Thanks so much, Belle. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Some faces I know. Simon, Adrian, nice to see you. I see we also have Telawea from SDS. Thanks for tuning in, and many others. So I'll kick off without further ado straight into our topic of today, everyone. And we're covering why a playbook for sales and for sales teams. And what's always difficult is the time. I'm going to try and keep things really on point and pack in as much value as I can to give a cross section to all types of businesses. So to kick straight into it, and I've just picked an analogy. I love the saying that failing to plan is planning to fail. And teams need a document of the strategy and the plan, the game plan for the best shots at optimal performance. And so I thought it best to look at an analogy like sport, which every human on the planet can relate to, even if you don't play a sport. And if we tackle the question, what does a playbook represent and who is a playbook for? Sport is a great analogy. So ideally to make this synonymous, and I'll parallel it then to sales teams. A sports playbook is for trainers, it's for coaches, it's the players themselves, but it helps them plan and execute their game plan. And it's endorsed with sign-off from the team manager and leadership. And it comes with the knowledge that by the time they go out on that game, we're all aligned. Now, it can include diagrams, as you're seeing on the screen, charts, a visual aid. And I stress again and repeating that a playbook provides the best opportunity for a team to maximize for optimal performance and continued success. So it doesn't just end with the diagrams, the book. There's an element of play required in coaching, in training, in educating the team how to work together to achieve the plays, which will ultimately win and help them succeed with the playbook in total. So it's really a blueprint for how to win the game. It can include the rules, but it needs to factor in the environment with which that team is playing, and obviously given the resources at hand and within their disposal. And that allows us to cater a playbook to different businesses and circumstances. So it's basically a document in a sports playbook sense, and it's unique to a given team. So it might list the team players, the plays available as mentioned, diagrams of those plays, the actual instructions, how to execute a play. So looking at the black field on my screen, it's showing you the direction and the layout of that team and how they're going to actually score a goal. And that is one play, but a team could document multiple. And so when we arrive on the team, on the field, we might find that the opponent is different to what we expected, and therefore having plays banked up will allow us to strategically shift as we move through the field. Information about the team's opponents. You might even have profiles in there of your competitors, your opponents, strategies for different situations. Economic times change, paralleling this to sales team. How does that impact us? So as I'm moving through this, there's a lot I'm covering, obviously, and you're probably thinking it's enough of the sport, let's get to sales. But it's a great analogy, because if we then look at the benefits of having that documented, some of the benefits would help improve communication, consistency in play. We don't want every team, certainly the skill that an individual player brings is the gold to how we win, but we do want some consistency in play, how we move around the field. One set of rules for the team to abide by, excluding their skin in the game, their skill, but we all have to play fair and play nice. Increased coordination between the team, better execution, increased preparation, like understanding the game better and based on the opponents, individualized game by game. So a playbook can be as small or as broad as we need it to be, depending on our environment and our situation. So if we then said, okay, why a playbook for sales and why the sales playbook so necessary. Hopefully you guys on the call, you're all salespeople. But if I ask you the question, don't you wish you could boost productivity in your sales team by establishing a consistent set of best practices, shortening the time it takes for new hires to get up and running, reducing the volume, but increasing the speed, isolating one set of consistent KPIs and one standard for the sales team to report those KPIs, and at the same time, empowering the sales team better. So for some of you, you might say, Glenn, I've already got this. I've got a playbook and it's working. And I have some of this in place, but it's likely that it could be refined or open to improvement. Maybe there are gaps there in some of the stuff we're going to unpack today that you could fill. And I hope that we can uncover those for you and actually show you how. For others, today's topic will show you the blueprint of how to actually put your playbook together and leveraging or creating a sales book playbook in the first place. So my goal is to address both audience types. You either have one or you don't. But without a playbook, your sales representatives have to come up with a new approach every single time. So if you're still a bit skeptical, saying then, wow, sounds like a lot of work, not sure I need this. The truth is, no matter how big or small or individualized your team is or isn't, at the moment, they're all doing things their own way. And there's not much consistency there. It's not in your control as leadership or with, if you're on this call, you simply need to put a playbook together. But if you could gather all the successful pitches, historically speaking, you could put the successful tactics, one uniform set of email templates together, call scripts, one convenient resource, that if it could easily be shared with an entire team, management and all of you could rest assured, sleep at night better, knowing that we actually don't have to think of those things. They're programmed, they're by rote, they're in a playbook. And that's exactly what a sales playbook does. It enhances the efficiency and significantly will improve the company's overall sales performance by osmosis. So similar to sports, and just paralleling them over now, we can have a playbook for sales that is relevant to our company, the unique fabric, the size, the resource, the structure. But a playbook, it can start from a template, and today we'll share links in the deck after today's hug, but it can include a template, which you can inherit, make it your own, copy and build it, or you can build yours from the ground up, and we'll give you the ingredients to both. But it's really that formal documentation, forcing you to sit down as a collective and lock in one system, one process, one set of procedures for the company. So it becomes a single source of sales truth, a methodology for the team to follow, apply uniformly. And at the same time, it can be coached, it can be taught, it can be trained. If people come, if people go, you rest assured that you could just plug in the next individual, leverage their unique skills and talents, and then train them up pretty quick. But it can also span beyond just sales, right? You can have a sales playbook for service, customer service. You can have playbooks for the marketing team that outline how they should do things. In the analogy of HubSpot, really they started building playbooks for sales teams, but there are definitely all these benefits I'm speaking of coaching, training. You could even have plays for prospecting in the sales side, for setting meetings and how you go about them with definitive agendas. You might be certain things you want to include in there: budget, authority, needs, timing, just the bare basics that are included in your playbook as an outline. Certainly, again, relating to the sales team, but there's no reason you can't do this for the entire team. And as I said, in the slides ahead, we'll show you exactly how to go about it. But it'll include best practices, sales tactics, the strategy. It'll include even looking at your sales, the buyer's journey allied to the sales function, and how to align all of our efforts, all of our activity directly to the pipeline and your stages. But I think that the most important thing is, again, keeping aligned to the fact that all of this and the actual playbook itself will help increase revenue. It will help increase sales. And most importantly, I think we want sales teams to focus on the things they do best, which is building relationships, but also loving what they do at the same time, and them not having to be the ones to continue to think about process. So without further ado, I'll just tiptoe over now to how we actually need to go about thinking about building our playbook. So you'll need to systemize and synchronize the technology. You'll have to bring all your people together to do so, the processes, the procedures, in order to introduce and ensure a consistent set and approach, but also freeing up as much time as possible from the people into the system to enable the sales team to continue to do what we've always done best, build relationships. So to create a playbook that's effective and useful for the sales team and the processes, it's important to involve the different stakeholders, the different people. So I think before we jump into saying, all right, here's how you build it, you must consider who's going to input into the playbook. And this may seem obvious, but not every business will fold in leadership. You might need to fold in the people responsible for sign-off, financial officers, in the RTO space, compliance. You might have to bring in top performers to understand how they're doing things differently to the rest of the team. That might expose that actually the way they perform and the things they're doing, others on the team need upskilling or can't do. And then obviously the actual sales development representatives, the SDRs themselves. So by including the expertise of a group and bringing everyone together and cross-sharing, you're also exposing best practice or lack thereof that you need to help ensure this playbook is going to solve for, and that it's easy to use, it's written in the language of the company, your branding, your guideline needs to follow through, obviously, and it's actually got to apply to how sales are done. And so you don't want it built by someone who sits in an ivory tower, managing a team, barking orders perhaps, but they have no idea how it works, boots on the ground. So in today's slide deck, we have prepared and included for you examples and templates that you can review. As I said, pull out bits and pieces, make it your own, or not, quite frankly, and just take what we're sharing as a guide and an overview. So I think in terms of what should your sales playbook include, which is folded into how we build it, at the very least on this slide, as I'm speaking, you can just process some of these checkpoints. These are not all of them. This is just a nice list to get started, for example, and it's really our recommendation, and you really can't go wrong if you include these things. But it's things your sales team should do. It's the result that you can measure. It's actions that can be taken and cross-checked, aligned to prospect and customer needs, right? It's the information, it's the action, it's the words, it's the demonstrations that your sales representatives should be familiar with, and then and use those when interacting with customers. For example, the sales template emails I mentioned previously, or even the HubSpot tool for snippets, which allow you to program just a sentence or a paragraph and paste that into an email, or paste it into a message, or paste it into a conversation inbox or a live chat message. But the beauty is you can actually share one consistent paragraph, one sentence across all these touch points, and all sales team members can have access to it. Now, if you don't have those tools, there's no reason you couldn't use a Google Doc, for example, and specify these things on a quick recall or a bookmark to copy paste from. Now, description of the ideal customer, right? And just your personas or your buyer profiles. Here's the bullet point of the businesses we deal with. Here is a description of the ideal persona, even if it's bullet pointed. I often tell sales teams in trainings, print those out, stick them on the wall. But where do they come from? They need agreement, they need buying, they need sign-off, and they need to be injected into your sales playbook. So it gives us, these points on the screen help us start to build a framework for determining if the leads are a good fit, right? What is a good fit? What's a bad fit? If a contact approaches the business, at what point, how do we qualify them? What are our actual qualifying questions? Then how do we deal with it? If they're a good fit, a bad fit, neither, what is our process for managing them? Maybe they're a bit softer and we need to hand them off to someone in the context of RTOs, a career advisor who can talk a little bit more to them. What is the process for that? What is the script that we're using? All of this can be bundled into a sales playbook. So it's a template for representing this information on the screen as a guiding light, right? And moving leads in the right direction and allied to their buyer journey, but also keeping everyone on team on the same song sheet. And then even if you've got geographical areas assigned to sales team members, or your business spans branches across the country, the goals need to be consistent. The approach needs to be consistent. So it's really irrelevant, because you can just ship off the playbook to a different branch and make sure there's someone competent who's trained up, and they can now train the team there on the playbook. This could also detail things like compensation, incentives that they receive, specific strategies and techniques they use. And those are often gray areas that are quite tricky to cover. You don't want to throw out someone's employment agreement, but you might want to discuss these things to incentivize the team. So although it's not on the screen, those little bits and pieces and tips and tricks can be included as well. Now, how to actually get started with building yours is you really want to review your sales processes. And if necessary, update them to current. You may not have done that for a while. You may not have ever run that exercise. Having done that, you want to outline kind of your goals, right? Your KPIs, the do's, the don'ts, and literally write them down. You want to determine who should be involved in the sales playbook creation process, so perhaps you could say that's the very first step. And again, the order of these events is quite unique business by business, but it's a good guiding light. You want to align your sales team with your marketing team. So as I said before, bring everyone together at a point in time. Collect your buyer persona information. And again, if you B2B, that translates back to buyer profile, which is, what is the business we want to deal with versus what is the person, the persona that we want to deal with ideally. And then provide a product and a feature training and education for reps. So again, detail how we're going to hand this over to the team. And you probably want to audit and update your sales enablement materials. And what I mean by that is any collateral, any document, sales brochure, email, even an email signature, a script, a calling card, all of these little materials in the old-fashioned world, in a business card, in a Rolodex, translating to a printable sales brochure. Yeah, again, in the RTO space, or even in insurance, you need a product disclosure statement. For RTO, you might need an actual course guide or a prospectus on our university, our institution, how it works. You need to make sure these materials are current, up to date, and then referencing them inside your playbook. Okay, so moving along, you then also want to think about what we discussed in sport, right? What are your plays? So if particular teams or particular people are hunting particular verticals, how are we going to go about that? We want to build the playbook, the tools, the templates to wrap around that function. And so again, just reinforcing, yes, HubSpot have a playbook tool, which we'll get into shortly, but you could just as easily use a Google Sheet with prompts, and there's other tools on the market, even just advanced form builders and the like that you can use, or a combination of both. What we just want is that it's easy, it's seamless, and it works for you. And at Lupo, certainly, we're all about the right technology to do something, not just using HubSpot because you have that. You then want to also look at, within these plays, and as per the nice visual that you're seeing on the screen, and I'll probably leave this for you to go through in your own time from the actual speaker notes that we're putting into the slide deck, because on the call today, we have different people with different things, but just to shoot through some of the plays could be personalized content or a lead qualification play, right? It focuses on how reps would effectively identify highly qualified leads to reach out to. If someone fills out a contact us page on your website, that doesn't mean they want to buy. If you don't have a drop menu asking why you're contacting us, you probably need to discuss that with them. You could have a demo play. This is how we run a demo. We could have a play in terms of a use case. You're a particular student with particular needs. This is how we're going to match our particular solution to those particular needs. You might then have a closing play, for particular students at this part of the journey, or for particular customers over there. We want to try to close the sale. These are the criteria of the things we need to be talking about. And then even things like a follow-up play. When this scenario happens, we haven't heard back from the person, what do we do? Is there an automation in our platform that sends them an SMS, sends them a WhatsApp? We don't really want to be doubling up. And then things like notifications, who needs to be doing that follow-up? So again, just conscious of time. Some of these I'm not going to shoot through too quick. And yes, we're a HubSpot partner. This is the HubSpot User Group. So I'm going to assume you're on the HubSpot tools, or you have access to them. And, you might entail a slight upgrade on cost or licensing, but this is something you can discuss with your HubSpot reps or ourselves if in fact you need those tools. But looking at how you would use HubSpot, this is just a screenshot of the actual tool, assuming it's being built. So in HubSpot, you would need to do everything I've just mentioned in your planning. I'd almost say build your playbook offline. It might be a Google Doc, because in HubSpot, the way the actual playbook tool works, it's quite clever in that you can build the equivalent of a Google Doc outlining everything you need. But really what the playbook does is it forces you into a couple questions or boxes, as you see on the screen, to absorb the responses. And it's those responses you store on a contact record. So if my job, Glenn, as a business development rep, is make an outreach to a LinkedIn individual to obtain the next step. The next step is, here's a question, here's an answer. Are they a good fit? Yes or no? And put the fit criteria in. I might have a script of everything I need to say and do inside the HubSpot playbook, but just the box you're seeing on my screen would be, how quickly would you need to solve the problem? Or an example I gave you, is this prospect a good fit? And here are the criteria. I could type my notes in and click save, and I'll show you on the contact record in a sec. And so if I'm now handing that lead over to somebody more senior to close the sale, take it to the next step, they will only really need to see the crux, which is, are they a best fit, yes or no? In the case of this question, how quickly does this individual need help? There's the answer. But there is the recipe as well in building these playbooks in HubSpot. And as I said, step one, you want to just build manually everything you need to have in it. And then step two, mold that into the HubSpot tool, isolate the questions that would take a user to the next step as number three, and that's how you use playbooks. So the screens to follow basically outline that in terms of creating and using a playbook in the HubSpot tool, using playbooks in contact, companies, and deals. That's where you'll find the actual tool, as well as tickets and custom CRM records. You can use snippets inside playbooks to recall snippets and play around and obviously have fun while doing this, which is pretty cool. HubSpot make it pretty easy. So just some ideas for playbooks. We've covered quite a few, but it's target customer profiles, stages of a sales process. And I spoke about plays in sport. These are kind of your plays in HubSpot. How do we handle customer objectives, objections, sales methodology, different sales tools and technologies, KPIs, and strategic objectives. And what you see here is just an example of some of the others where each one could be a playbook, quite individual, or you could also then group them all together as one big playbook. It's really up to you. We've also included in the document just a template, a free template to building your own, as I mentioned. And this is just a screenshot in HubSpot that if you said, all right, Glenn, I want to go ahead and build a playbook, how do I do it? As you can see in this menu over here, you just go to sales and playbooks. If you don't have access to this and you're seeing a little lock, that's because you may not have the license and the pro seat. You can always upgrade per user to achieve that. And I'm just giving you an example over here of some of the playbooks you might just have. So, your first call if you're in sales, outreach, outbound prospecting, even just putting other playbooks in there in the way of a sample, just so you get a sense of it. And then once you click into one of those, this is the screen you'll see to actually, it's a bit like a Word document, go in and build your playbook. And so on the one hand, you're building the entire prompt, right? But then as you go lower down, if there are the intersection points where you need to now grab the responses because that's the value you're going to use to get to the next step, this is what I was referring to before. It's just a question, an answer, and you program those in. And if we look then at the flip side of I'm now a user sorry, this is just another slide on actually bringing up the playbook as a user. And so in that context, I'm a salesperson. I call up this outbound sales prospecting playbook. This is actually what I'm going to see in HubSpot. And you can see I bring this up while I'm on the phone call. So it's a prompt, it's on the screen, it's there. And then once I put the phone and, as I move through this, it's just 1 sec, sorry. It's this screen over here, which I'll see the equivalent of. I'll insert my responses. I'll click save and log the call, and that'll now appear with my responses only from those question boxes on the contact record. I thought I had the final slide image capture here, but I don't, unfortunately. And I'm just again conscious of your precious time as we head towards the Q&A section. We have put together an awesome bundle of consolidated stuff that is all HubSpot templates driven, but it's universal and actually works on any platform that you're on. So we've given you access to all of these awesome things: template emails, calling script, prospect and objective handling, battle cards, ABC, how do we go about things, a closing guide, really some awesome resources. And HubSpot's been pioneering this probably alongside Salesforce and some of the other big players, Microsoft. But they've been doing it for so long that you really can't go wrong with these templates. And as I say, they are quite universal cross-platform. And then finally, what I'd like to just say is playbooks can be complicated. And oftentimes, certainly with bigger teams, you do need a facilitator who can distill emotion, bring everyone on a level playing field and focus away from personalities and onto actually getting the job done to build this. This is where we called on in quite a big way, but DIY definitely works. But if you are struggling or your team is slightly bigger or you just don't know where to start, we would love to help you. So please reach out. We've got a great system to expedite it, make it pretty quick. It can be a project, but generally quarterly, it's good to maintain these things, bring us in. Even sales and marketing alignment on the top of the playbook outcomes is a difficult thing to do internally because of the personalities and the emotion. So if we can help in any way, please do reach out. And we're at the point of the webinar today, especially time-wise, to now turn the microphone to all of you. I do tend to speak quite quickly, so I apologize if that was lost. Hopefully you took advantage of the closed captioning option. And if you didn't, now is the time to slow me down. Please type your chat. I think you do have the option to come off mute and throw out some questions, which I would love and encourage. So I see Nimrod's just shaking. So maybe Noah, you can just explain to
Yeah.
all to find
So-
unmute.
Yep. So guys, we have two options here. You guys feel free to come off mute and ask Glenn directly if you're comfortable with that, or we also have the Q&A option you'll see at the bottom of the Zoom toolbar, and you can type in your question there and we can get Glenn to Q&A it like that. So if you guys have any questions, now's the time.
Awesome. I know sometimes everyone needs to think a little or have the courage to jump out and ask, but please do if you do. I see, looks like we do have one question there, Nemo.
Yep. So Simon said, can you build workflows of data entered into Playbook fields?
Simon, it's a damn good question. I am pretty sure you can factor in properties and personalization tokens, and therefore they would just lean on the capability in workflows, much the same as with leaning on those properties in workflows anyway. However, I love it when you push me. So I'm going to just check in and yeah, if you don't mind, I will reach out to you directly after the webinar just to triple confirm or give you a guardrail on the restrictions there. But it's a great question. Thank you.
So, hey, Glenn.
Adrian?
Just to kind of tag on to the question from Simon, I think what and it might be a good time to kind of give you an example of what we're attempting to do.
Yes.
Basically, we're looking to just about get the sales pipelines and the deal pipelines as much hands-off as possible. So by that, I mean effectively restricting how much contact and ability our sales team have to actually move deals on their own across from one stage to the next. And I think we were looking at using playbooks because you can populate custom fields or your own properties or whatever in HubSpot when an answer is received or it's populated in the playbook. And then using that logic to feed into workflows to move a deal from stage A to stage B, depending on how much data we have as well.
I understand. So maybe what I'll do is expand that and put the three things I'm seeing that relate to one another in an order for you that while I come back to you with the response, probably it's one and the same and my current response will solve for you. So what we find is we've had certain businesses build highly complex automation in sales pipeline. And what happens is it becomes abstract. So person on the firing front line who's having the conversation does some stuff and it has awful implications because the workflows in the sales pipeline are too complex. So I'm bringing that front and center to say, right up front, I could tell you, I would always recommend manual short processes, which you've obviously done, to validate the need for automation. And I know you're pretty sophisticated on it, so I'll leap forward, right? That the playbook's really the instruction set. It's like the operating manual of how to do things. So even if you can't leverage the fields in the playbook, why it's fairly irrelevant is really what you want the playbook saying is, okay, here's the scenario, but what we're going to lock in is that when you have that scenario, you must update these fields, right? So playbook's not just about capturing an answer and asking a question, but if it says, look, when you get off this call, you must update these three fields. And even if it's just yes, no, or it's inert or unsure, those three fields are impacting workflows. And that way you're putting a guardrail on, it's not abstract anymore because Glenn on the firing line, who just put the phone down, needs to know he must update these three fields every time. So in that, if I just unpack that, the sales playbook will capture those steps in the phone call. And then at the end, it can capture the summary right after the phone call, whether it was successful or not. This is what you need to do. And you need to update these three fields on the left side of a contact record and those two fields on the left side of a company record. And that way, they don't have to know why and what the impact is. Now, you've built workflows leaning on those fields to move the deals around. And what we find is that most companies don't take the time to build the playbook, and hence they're expecting the front end team to integrate with the workflows, but they don't see the non-abstract playbook that tells them what to do and make sure they never leave it out. And then it turns to a training thing, right? If everyone can turn to page 3 in the manual, please make sure when you put the phone down, you focus on the playbook's page 4 and do exactly what it says and recall it in front of you. So Adrian, I hope that has answered the question in a roundabout way. And if you said, I want to take it a step further where they just capture the answer includes a field, and therefore the field gets auto-updated, that's exactly what I'd like to come back to you with.
Yep, that's pretty much spot on, Glenn. So thank you for the answer.
Yeah,
Glenn?
with pleasure. And yes,
We have another question from Michael. So can playbooks be pre-populated by existing data in the CRM?
So Michael, in a similar vein, it just depends which, and again, my brain's a bit foggy. I'm processing and I understand what you're asking. I'm just actually going to check something because it's this difference between a field and leveraging those fields inside the build structure of your playbook. Just 1 second. And yeah, so typically speaking, at the moment, you can really only include a question, and within that question, you can leverage a snippet. And it's possible on the enterprise level that you could load your fields into the responses and update a property. So yes, if you're on the enterprise level, you will have the ability in the playbook to update a property, but not if you're on the pro level. And that doubles into Simon's. But again, in real time, I'm just looking and I'm seeing that is the result. But for that, it's a similar question to Simon's question. So if you can, I'll come back to you guys directly. The one thing I will just ask is, unfortunately, the way that the HubSpot webinar presentation works, we actually don't get your contact emails. So Michael, and Simon and Adrian, I have yours, but Michael, if you could share your email address in the chat, again, you'd be consenting to do so. We won't add you to any subscription preference centers and things like that, but I would just love to communicate back with you with the outcome to your question. So if you could just share that in the chat, we'll make sure that we have that and can respond to you, or we'll hunt you down on LinkedIn. Cool. Any other questions?
I think that's
Great.
it.
Awesome. Well, a big thank you to all of you for attending today. I hope you found that helpful and useful. We do a follow-up email with the slideshow and the notes, and there's also an opportunity to actually give us feedback there. If you do have any suggestions, please do. We love to live and grow and learn, and we'd love to adapt on your feedback. Otherwise, thank you all very much for attending. We love everything, obviously, AI, HubSpot, automation, sales. So it's been a pleasure having you all until the next one.